These two issues, morality and democracy, are intimately related because, as John Adams, one of America's founding fathers, said, we have no constitution that functions in the absence of a moral people. In order to destroy the American form of government, the cultural revolutionaries had to first undermine America's understanding of morality, because only morality guarantees the freedom necessary for self-government. Unlike Aristotle, who argued that men were slaves physiai, which is to say by nature, St. Augustine took a radically moral view of the issue. Man was free as long as he was moral, which is to say, acting according to the dictates of practical reason. It is clear, he wrote in The City of God, that sin is the primary cause of servitude. That means, he continued in another passage from the same book, that a good man, though a slave, is free, but a wicked man, though a king, is a slave. For he serves not one man alone, but is what is worse, as many masters as he has vices. This, I said in another context, is the foundation of the regime that we now live under, which is the opposite of Christian culture that was created during the 1,000-year reign after the fall of Rome. The Christian says, if you want to be free, be moral. The anti-Christian government of Antichrist that begins, you can name it, maybe with the French Revolution, but we have various categories, takes that and turns it upside down, turns it on his head, which is basically, if you want to maintain political control, promote vice. And that's the story of our culture right now. America rules the way Satan rules. That's why the Iranians call it the Great Satan. It rules by moral corruption. And it spreads this moral corruption throughout the entire world under the pretext of spreading or concern about human rights. And so when Obama goes to Kenya, what does he talk about? He lectures those people on human rights, which means the right to sodomy or the right to abortion. Man is a rational creature, okay, which means he has to follow the dictates of practical reason. So there can be no right to something that is morally wrong. That's impossible, and this is the sleight of hand that is now being used to deprive us of our government, our representative government. And I say this because I watched it happen firsthand in the state of Indiana. I don't know, those of you who are not as fortunate as I am living in the state of Indiana may not have noticed that during March of this year, our state was vilified by the entire nation because it had passed something called the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. The citizens of the government legislature had passed this law. This law stated simply that people should not be coerced into participating in gay weddings if it violated their conscience. This outraged a particularly influential group of people in the United States. It also, the governor of Indiana, by the name of Mike Pence, is a Republican. He was totally befuddled. He did not understand the way warfare is conducted in our age. As I said before, it's not guys in red uniforms firing cannons at guys in blue uniforms anymore. It's going to be about human rights or homosexual discrimination. And so when Mike Pence went on Meet the Press, he looked like a deer caught in the headlights. He's a Republican. And the reason he was so befuddled is because the revolutionaries in this instance were a cabal of three different groups of people. The CEOs. Republicans are supposed to be they stand for the CEOs. That's their party, right? So why are they doing this? The homosexuals and the Jews. What do these three groups have in common? They're all minorities. The 1% on Wall Street became famous. Homosexuals are between 1% and 2%, any accurate indication, and Jews are always a minority in any culture where they live. What do they have in common? They have enormous political and media and financial power. And so what is their main problem? How do you get to impose your views on everyone else when the official explanation is that we live in a democracy? How do you do this? Well, you do this by by talking about human rights and by talking about the morality of human rights. The net result is tyranny. In an article which appeared in First Things, a Notre Dame professor, Patrick J. Deneen, wrote, "What we saw in Indiana was not just a miscalculation by Republicans. We saw fully unmasked just who runs America and the kind of America that they are bringing more fully into reality every passing day. It will be an America where the powerful will govern completely over the powerless, where the rich dictate terms to the poor, where the strong are unleashed from the old restraints of culture and place, where libertarian indifference, whether in respect to economic inequality or morals, is inscribed into the national fabric, and where the unburdened hedonic human will reigns ascendant." That's the world we're facing now. We're talking about successful revolutions where the communists failed. If the communists had showed up in Indiana and said, we're going to rewrite your laws, well, who would have gone along with it? The Republican governor? No. But a CEO parachutes in from San Francisco and they welcome him with open arms. Who gave this guy the right to rewrite the laws of the state of Indiana? Nobody can answer that question. I've asked one politician after another. They can't answer that question. He doesn't live in Indiana. Nobody elected him. We elected a certain group of people, and they were completely ignored by this revolutionary cabal that is now the ruling coalition in the United States. It's not just the United States. The Riffer coup d'etat employed the same modus operandi as the one which Victoria Nuland orchestrated in the Ukraine in February of last year, which was in turn a replay of all of the so-called color revolutions which the CIA used to take control of the southern tier of former Soviet republics during the years following the fall of communism. What happened in Indiana during Holy Week was also followed the pattern of the failed coup d'etat in Iran in 2009, when the CIA, the National Endowment for Democracy, and a host of other NGO fronts for covert warfare tried to overturn that year's election. There's even a movie about it. It's called Rosewater. Jon Stewart is the director of that movie. You can see what they did just by looking at that movie. Marx's contention that history repeats itself, first as tragedy and then as farce, finds easy substantiation if we compare the two catalyzing events of the respective coups in Iran and Indiana. In Iran in 2009, we had the tragic death of Neda Sultan. In Indiana in 2015, we had the story of Memories Pizza. Remember Memories Pizza? It's a pizzeria in Walkerton, Indiana. You've never heard of Walkerton, Indiana. It has 2,000 people. The local TV stations in South Bend sent out their helicopter gunships, and they found a pizzeria in Walkerton, Indiana, where the lady says, "No, we wouldn't cater to a gay wedding." And all hell broke loose at that point. Both of these things were media-confected events used to justify their various respective media-orchestrated color revolutions. Both the coup in Indiana and the coup in Iran had a common source in the CIA's psychological and doctrinal warfare programs, which became operative in 1953. In other words, before we can understand what is happening in 2015, and we have to go back and understand what happened in that pivotal year in which the CIA took over the White House and inaugurated the era of psychological warfare by staging the coup d'etat which toppled Mossadegh and put the Shah on the peacock throne.